For 10 years, I was the person you called when everything else went wrong. Not just at Midwest Logistics Group, the company that signed my paychecks, but for my clients. The ones who relied on us to move everything from life-saving medical equipment and delicate manufacturing components to temperature-controlled food and high-value electronics. My name is Scarlett, and my job title was Senior Account Manager, but what I really did was build bridges over logistical chasms. I joined Midwest Logistics Group when it was a fraction of its size, back when Eleanor, the founder, still walked the halls and knew everyone's name. Eleanor built the company on trust in her people, and trust with her clients. She understood that moving goods wasn't just about trucks and warehouses. It was about relationships, anticipating problems before they happened, and moving heaven and earth when a client was in a bind. That was my philosophy, too. I learned the ins and outs of every client's business, Mason's just-in-time manufacturing needs, Ryan's complex distribution network spanning multiple states, Chloe's hypersensitive cold chain requirements for her regional food supply. They weren't just accounts. They were partners. I'd stay up late tracking a storm that might delay a critical shipment, find alternative routes through flooded areas, sweet-talk port authorities, or coordinate last-minute reroutes when a client's own plans fell through. There were missed soccer games, canceled dinners, and sleep sacrificed, but the gratitude and reliance of my clients felt like a different kind of currency. It felt like value. Then came Ethan. He arrived 6 months ago, fresh out of some corporate restructuring program, smelling of expensive cologne and an almost religious devotion to spreadsheets and buzzwords. Optimization, scalability, synergy, and his favorite, pure efficiency. He saw our experienced staff, our flexible processes, and our deep client relationships not as assets, but as legacy costs and unnecessary friction. He installed aggressive new software systems, cut administrative support, centralized everything, and talked endlessly about automating client interactions. My warnings that logistics had too many variables, too many human elements, to be fully automated, that clients valued personal contact, were met with that cold, patronizing smile of his. Scarlett, the future is digital. Personal relationships don't show up on a balance sheet. The changes caused immediate chaos internally. Paperwork errors increased, communication broke down, and the new centralized client support hub became a black hole where issues disappeared. But Ethan was fixated on his metrics, ignoring the rising tide of frustration from clients who were now getting bounced between departments or dealing with automated menus instead of reaching a human who understood their business. Just yesterday, I pulled off a miracle for Chloe, rerouting a critical shipment of perishable goods through 3 states affected by unexpected flash floods, saving her company hundreds of thousands of dollars. She was effusive in her thanks. I walked into the office today feeling that familiar surge of satisfaction from solving a real, complex problem. Ethan called me into his glass-walled office late this afternoon. He didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask about the Chloe situation. He didn't meet my eyes. The termination papers were already printed. His explanation was swift, devoid of empathy. My role, he said, involved too much manual intervention and relationship overhead that wasn't scalable or efficient. His new system, the centralized hub, could handle everything. My years of expertise, my late nights, the trust I'd built, were reducible to an inefficient process Ethan was eliminating. "It's nothing personal, Scarlett," he said, finally looking at me with that chillingly detached smile. "Just pure efficiency." I felt the blood drain from my face. Replaced by software. Dismissed for efficiency. The insult was a physical blow. I numbly gathered my laptop, badge, and the single box of personal items. The decade of dedication felt lighter than air. Walking out of that building, into the indifferent hum of city traffic, felt surreal. The world hadn't stopped, but mine had tilted precariously. Pure efficiency. The words bounced around in my head, a cruel echo of everything I thought I'd built. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the steering wheel cold under my hands. 10 years. Reduced to an inefficiency. How was I going to tell my partner? My family? The panic started to set in, cold and sharp. The financial worry was immediate and pressing. The sense of being discarded, replaced by lines of code, was soul-crushing. Then my phone started vibrating. And vibrating. and vibrating. It started with Mason. His caller ID popped up unexpected. I almost didn't answer, still reeling. But I did. His voice, usually calm and steady, was tight with frustration. "Scarlett, what the hell is going on? We just got an email. Some generic HR thing saying you're no longer with Midwest Logistics? Is this true?" I managed a choked, "Yes, Mason. It's true." He paused, then exploded slightly. "Are they insane? You're half the reason we stick with Midwest. You're the only one there who understands our JIT system, who knows when to call our plant manager directly, who fixes the screw-ups before they cost us millions. Replaced you with, what? An automated phone line." The raw anger in his voice was like a lifeline. It wasn't pity. It was genuine business concern, rooted in reliance. My value wasn't invisible to everyone. Ryan was next. "Scarlett, I heard. Please tell me it's not true. I just got off the phone with their new support hub. Took me 20 minutes to explain a basic issue to someone reading from a script. If you're gone, who do I call when a shipment of high-value electronics is stuck in customs on a Friday afternoon?" "Who?" Chloe texted, a string of horrified emojis followed by "call me immediately yesterday." When I called, she was furious. "That Blizzard shipment. They think some system could have handled that? Only you knew who to call, who to bribe, what permits to pull strings for. If this is how they're operating now, I don't know if we can stay with them. Where are you going?" Message after message, call after call. Clients I'd worked with for years, some big, some smaller but critical to their own supply chains, all expressing shock, anger, and a shared sentiment. Their loyalty was to me, not the name on the building. They didn't trust the automated systems or the faceless hub. They trusted Scarlett, the person who always got it done. Sitting there, listening to their genuine distress about their own businesses and their unwavering belief in my ability to help them, something shifted inside me. The cold despair began to warm with a fierce sense of vindication, and then, something more dangerous, possibility. Ethan saw me as an inefficiency. My clients saw me as essential. What if I didn't need Midwest Logistics Group to be essential? I drove home, the panic about the future still there, but now mixed with a potent cocktail of anger and audacious hope. I called David, my friend who worked in corporate finance. I laid out what happened, ending with the barrage of client calls. "David," I said, my voice trembling slightly, not just from emotion but from the sheer scale of the idea forming, "they fired me because they think my job can be done by software. But my clients don't think so. What would it take? What would it realistically take to start our own logistics company?" David's initial reaction was protective outrage. "They did what? After everything you've done for them? That's unbelievable, Scarlett." But as I explained the calls, his tone shifted. He started asking sharp, business-oriented questions. "These clients, how large are they? Are their contracts coming up for renewal? Are there any non-compete clauses in your contract? What's the capital requirement for starting a firm?" Over the next few days, David and I talked endlessly. We researched, crunched numbers, and explored options. A small consulting firm? Too limited. Partnering with an existing competitor? Possible, but meant less control, and my clients were loyal to me, not necessarily another big name. The idea of building our own company, one based on the values Midwest Logistics Group had abandoned, relationships, reliability, problem-solving, began to feel less like a wild fantasy and more like a compelling mission. I needed to go back to Midwest Logistics Group one last time to collect a few remaining personal items and drop off some final paperwork. Walking through the familiar halls felt alien. The atmosphere was palpably tense. People looked stressed. Hushed conversations stopped when I approached. I saw some of the disastrous effects of Ethan's changes firsthand. A frantic call about a lost shipment that the new system couldn't locate. 2 employees arguing over contradictory instructions from the centralized hub. I managed to briefly speak to Caleb and Gabriel, 2 of our best guys in warehousing and transport coordination, whom I'd mentored over the years. They looked worn down, complaining about impossible workloads, broken processes, and the constant threat of automation replacing them. "It's a mess, Scarlett," Caleb muttered, shaking his head. "Feels like the ship is sinking." As I was about to leave, Ethan appeared, marching towards me with a determined stride, flanked by a HR representative. He'd clearly heard I was talking to clients. His face was set in a hard, accusatory line. "Scarlett," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass, "this is private property. Your access is terminated. And we are aware you've been contacting our clients." I held up my box. "Just collecting the rest of my things, Ethan. And saying goodbye to colleagues." "You are interfering with our business relationships," he pressed, ignoring my explanation. He puffed up, delivering his lines like a cheap lawyer in a TV drama. "Midwest Logistics Group considers your actions tortious interference. You sign non-compete and non-solicitation agreements. If you attempt to solicit our clients, we will pursue full legal remedies. We will sue you, Scarlett. We will bury you in legal fees." The explicit threat, the mention of being sued, sent a jolt of fear through me. Legal battles were expensive, crushing. My mind raced. Did I sign those? What were the terms? Then a memory clicked. Years ago, during a contract update, Eleanor had personally reviewed the documents, insisting on fair terms for her senior staff. I met Ethan's gaze, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Perhaps you should double-check the specifics of those agreements, Ethan," I said, recalling a detail about the expiry period or scope. "My understanding is that those clauses are either no longer applicable or unenforceable in this context. You might want to consult with actual counsel before making baseless threats." His smug expression faltered slightly. He hadn't expected me to push back or know anything about the agreements beyond his boilerplate threat. The HR rep beside him looked uncomfortable. "Regardless," Ethan recovered, though less forcefully, "this is your formal warning. Stay away from our clients." I simply nodded, clutched my box, and walked out. But the fear of the lawsuit lingered. Later that evening, a message arrived on a secure app from Naomi. Naomi was an administrator at Midwest Logistics Group, someone who saw everything: the emails, the internal reports, the meeting schedules. She was old guard, fiercely loyal to the company Eleanor built, and increasingly horrified by Ethan's actions and the chaos they were creating. She risked her job, perhaps more, to contact me. "Scarlett," the message read, "I had to tell you. It's worse than you know. The efficiency changes, the layoffs. It's all prelude. They're planning to shut down the Tulsa office entirely in 6 months. Liquidate assets. Move everything to Arizona for tax breaks. Everyone here is getting laid off. They just haven't announced it yet." I saw the relocation plans, the internal communications. It's real. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just incompetence. It was a cynical, calculated betrayal. They were gutting the company, alienating clients, and burning out the staff, all while planning to discard everyone anyway. Ethan's pure efficiency wasn't about improving the company. It was about extracting maximum value before abandoning ship. The legal threat wasn't about protecting business. It was about intimidating anyone who might get in their way as they cleared the decks. The stakes had just become incredibly high, not just for me, but for dozens of people who trusted Midwest Logistics Group with their livelihoods. This wasn't just an opportunity anymore. It was a moral obligation. Naomi's revelation hit me like a physical blow. The immediate shock gave way to a cold, hard fury. It wasn't just that they had fired me. They were planning to gut the entire operation. Lay off everyone: Caleb, Gabriel, Naomi herself, and dozens of others, while bleeding the clients dry with their failing processes. Ethan's obsession with efficiency wasn't about building a better company. It was about maximizing short-term value before abandoning ship. I immediately called David and relayed everything Naomi had told me. There was a long silence on his end. "So," he finally said, his voice quiet but intense, "all the talk about streamlining and optimizing, it was just camouflage. They were always planning to scrap the whole thing." "Exactly," I confirmed. "They're tearing down everything Eleanor built, risking client relationships and people's jobs, just to chase tax incentives somewhere else." David was quiet again, processing. Then his tone shifted, becoming sharper, more focused. "Scarlett, this changes everything. 6 months. That's the window. They're creating a massive vacuum. If they're abandoning their clients and their people, we can't just start a small consulting firm. We need to build something that can absorb that. We need to build a real logistics company. Fast. The idea, already simmering, now boiled over with urgency and purpose. It wasn't just about my career or even getting back at Ethan. It was about saving jobs, protecting the clients who believed in me, and honoring the legacy of Eleanor's original company, which valued people and trust. It was a daunting prospect, the scale of it immense. Starting a logistics company from scratch required significant capital, infrastructure, licensing, and, most importantly, people. We'll need funding, I said, stating the obvious. More than my savings, more than yours. We'll figure out the financing, David replied, already sounding like the financial expert he was. But the biggest asset, you already have. The clients. And now, with this news, the best people at Midwest Logistics Group are going to be looking for an exit. That's when I thought of Eleanor. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since she sold the company. I knew she'd had to sell due to a sudden, devastating family medical crisis that had drained her resources and required her full attention, something that always felt unfair given how much she'd poured into the business. But she had built that company on values I still believed in. If anyone would understand the depth of the current betrayal, it was her. I found her contact information and called. She sounded surprised but pleased to hear from me. I carefully explained who I was, what had happened at Midwest Logistics Group, the disaster Ethan was creating, the client exodus, the legal threats, and finally, what Naomi had revealed about the planned shutdown and layoffs. Eleanor listened, silent on the other end. When I finished, her voice was low, thick with emotion. Those corporate vultures, she whispered, the anger palpable. Destroying everything and planning to just discard everyone. She knew so many of the people still there, employees who had been with her for decades. And you, she continued, her voice gaining strength. They fired you? The one person who actually knew how to keep things running. I explained the plan David and I were formulating, building a new company focused on reliable service and valuing employees, aiming to capture the business and hire the people Midwest Logistics Group was abandoning. I spoke about the capital needed, the challenges. How much? Eleanor cut in, her tone decisive. I hesitated, mentioning a preliminary figure David and I had discussed, outlining what it would allow us to do initially. No, Eleanor said firmly. That's not enough. If you're going to do this, do it right. Do it big enough to matter. Do it for the people. Do it to show them what true value is. She named a figure, significantly larger than I could have imagined, a figure that would allow us to lease proper space, secure better equipment, and hire a core team immediately. I was saving it, she said, her voice softening slightly, for a long overdue retirement, maybe a fishing cabin. But this is more important. This is about saving what they're trying to kill. It wasn't just an investment. It was a partnership. A passing of the torch. A fight for the soul of the business. With Eleanor's backing, our audacious plan suddenly felt possible. With Eleanor's commitment, the whirlwind began. David, with his financial background, took the lead on establishing the legal entity Reliable Routes Logistics, a name we felt captured our core promise, securing the necessary licenses, insurance, and setting up the initial financial structures. Eleanor provided the significant seed capital, while David and I pooled our savings. His connections also helped us secure a line of credit from a bank that was impressed by our combined experience and Eleanor's backing. Meanwhile, my focus was on the operational side and, most critically, the people. We leased a modest but functional office space and a small warehouse facility in an industrial park, strategically located for easy access to major routes and our target clients. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Discreetly, I began reaching out to the key people at Midwest Logistics Group. First, Patty, the veteran dispatcher, who had been the calming voice on the radio for years. She was miserable under Ethan's chaotic regime. When I explained the plan and the impending shutdown, she was shocked, then determined. "I'm in, Scarlett," she said without hesitation. "Anything to get out from under that idiot and work somewhere people are treated right." Then Caleb and Gabriel. They were initially hesitant, scared of leaving their jobs. But I showed them the internal documents Naomi had provided, with her permission, of course, acknowledging her risk. The cold, hard proof of the planned layoffs solidified their decision. They were hurt, angry, but also relieved that there was an alternative. "He was working us to death anyway," Gabriel said bitterly. "At least with you, we know the work means something." We also brought over a couple of skilled mechanics fed up with being told to put off preventative maintenance to save a few bucks, a critical administrative assistant, and a handful of the most reliable drivers who had either already quit Midwest Logistics Group or were actively looking to leave. Midwest Logistics Group continued its rapid descent into dysfunction. With experienced staff leaving and the new automated systems failing spectacularly, errors became commonplace. Shipments were delayed. Packages went missing. Communication with clients became a labyrinth of automated menus and poorly trained, overwhelmed staff at the centralized hub. Ethan seemed oblivious, or perhaps simply didn't care, as long as his initial cost-cutting metrics looked good on paper. He was reportedly spending most of his time in frantic video calls with his corporate bosses, trying to explain away the mounting failures without admitting his approach was fundamentally flawed. His desperation mounted. He began aggressively slashing rates for key clients, trying to buy their loyalty back. But the clients, who were experiencing the chaos firsthand, saw through it. Cheap prices didn't matter if your crucial components were lost or your perishable goods spoiled. As our team at Reliable Routes Logistics grew, powered by the expertise and shared frustration of former Midwest Logistics Group employees, we started feeling ready. We had the people, the passion, the framework. Now it was time to prove ourselves to the clients who had shown me such unexpected loyalty. I began the strategic outreach. I didn't call them begging for business. I called them as a trusted partner, someone who understood their needs. I introduced them to Reliable Routes Logistics, highlighting our team of experienced professionals, mentioning names they knew, like Patty, Caleb, Gabriel, our commitment to reliability, and our local presence. And subtly, but clearly, I confirmed the rumors they were likely already hearing that Midwest Logistics Group's regional operation was unstable and had an uncertain future, hinting strongly at the planned shutdown without explicitly revealing Naomi as the source. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Mason, Ryan, and Chloe, among others, were relieved and eager to explore the possibility. They didn't want lower rates. They wanted peace of mind. They wanted reliability. They wanted the confidence of knowing that when something went wrong, there was a human being they could call who knew their name and their business. The conversations with clients were different from a typical sales pitch. They were rooted in existing trust, in shared history of problems solved and crises averted. I didn't have to convince them of my capabilities. They already knew them. What they needed to know was that Reliable Routes Logistics could replicate that reliability on a consistent basis, with the necessary infrastructure and team. Mason was the first major client to commit. He didn't jump all in immediately, which was smart business. "Okay, Scarlett," he said after reviewing our rates, insurance, and team profiles. "Your pricing is competitive. Your team sounds like the old guard who actually knew what they were doing. We'll start by shifting 20% of our non-critical shipments to you over the next month. If that goes smoothly, we'll talk about the rest." Ryan was next. His concerns were primarily about security and precision for his high-value electronics. We walked him through our internal protocols, our hiring standards, only experienced personnel, background checks, and introduced him to Caleb, who would be overseeing the handling of their goods. Ryan agreed to a similar phased transition, starting with a percentage of his regional distribution. Chloe, dealing with the unforgiving timelines of perishables, needed the most reassurance about consistency and rapid response. She spoke at length with Patty about dispatching protocols and backup plans. Seeing Patty, a familiar, trusted voice, now working for us, seemed to ease many of her worries. She committed to moving a significant portion of her business, with the understanding that if we could handle her critical, time-sensitive runs flawlessly, the rest would follow. This phased approach was vital. It allowed Reliable Routes Logistics to scale up responsibly, refine our processes, and prove our capabilities without being overwhelmed. Every successful delivery, every smoothly handled issue, built our reputation and confidence. Our team, made up of people who had felt undervalued and frustrated at Midwest Logistics Group, was energized. They took pride in doing things the right way, in providing the high level of service they knew was possible. Meanwhile, the wheels were coming off at Midwest Logistics Group. The client complaints escalated. Mason's team reported missed pickups and incorrect deliveries. Ryan's sensitive electronic shipments were delayed due to routing errors generated by the new system. Chloe had a near disaster with a temperature-controlled shipment because a backup generator failed on a truck that hadn't had proper preventative maintenance, the very kind Ethan had cut. Ethan's response was to blame everyone but himself. He accused remaining staff of incompetence, pushed automated systems harder, and continued his aggressive, confusing price wars. The chaos only worsened, creating a vicious cycle that drove more clients away. Then came the call that marked the true tipping point. It was from Mason, his voice urgent. "Scarlett, we've got a code red. One of our main production lines just went down. We need a critical component from our supplier in Ohio immediately. It has to be here by morning or we're looking at millions in lost production. Midwest is, well, they're useless right now. Can you do it? Can reliable routes do it?" It was exactly the kind of impossible, high-stakes challenge I used to solve for him at Midwest Logistics Group. The kind of challenge Ethan's pure efficiency system was designed to avoid. "Mason," I said, my heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and determination. "Send us the details. We'll make it happen." We mobilized the team. Patty immediately worked on routing. Caleb and Gabriel oversaw the priority handling at our small warehouse. David coordinated the emergency financing needed for a dedicated priority run. We assigned our most experienced driver. The entire team understood the stakes. This wasn't just a shipment. It was our chance to prove ourselves on the highest level. It was a direct comparison. The next morning, the critical component arrived at Mason's plant hours ahead of schedule. Our driver had pushed hard but safely. Patty's routing was flawless, and the coordination at our small hub by Caleb and Gabriel was executed with precision. Mason himself was there to greet the truck, looking exhausted but immensely relieved. "Scarlett," he said over the phone shortly after, "you did it. Again. Just like the old days. You saved our bacon. That production line is coming back online thanks to you." He paused. "We're done with Midwest Logistics Group. Effective immediately, you're handling 100% of our freight. Send me the contracts." Mason's move sent shockwaves. His company was a major player, and everyone in the industry knew how reliant he was on reliable logistics. When word spread that he had switched entirely to reliable routes logistics, it was the validation we needed. Ryan called the same day. "Heard about the Mason shipment. Impressive, Scarlett. Very impressive. We're ready too. Their service has been a nightmare. Consider all our regional freight moved to reliable routes logistics starting next week." Chloe followed suit shortly after, increasing her volume with us significantly and phasing out Midwest Logistics Group entirely within days. "I can't afford mistakes with my product," she explained. "I trust you and your team." It was a cascade. Other clients who had been testing us or watching closely began moving their business over entirely. They saw the clear difference between reliable routes logistics reliability and Midwest Logistics Group's spiraling incompetence. Ethan's frantic calls, his slashed rates, his empty promises, couldn't compete with demonstrated performance and established trust. The internal chaos at Midwest Logistics Group intensified as their revenue streams dried up overnight. Remaining staff were demoralized. The automated systems buckled under the pressure of errors and lack of human oversight. The lawsuits over damaged goods and missed deadlines began piling up. Then came the final, fatal blow. Their single largest client, a national retailer whose logistics were incredibly complex, finally pulled their business. They had been patient, but a series of critical failures directly linked to Ethan's efficiency changes, combined with the undeniable fact that Midwest Logistics Group was clearly unstable and losing all their other major clients, was too much. Their departure wasn't even reported widely. It was just a quiet, deadly amputation. Ethan was reportedly in a state of complete panic, screaming at staff, making wild accusations about sabotage. But the truth was simpler. His own blind pursuit of pure efficiency, at the expense of people and relationships, had gutted the company from the inside out. The scene at the Midwest Logistics Group office became a visible symbol of their collapse. Trucks sat idle in the yard. Fewer and fewer employees showed up, and eventually a for lease sign appeared on the fence, stark against the once familiar company logo. Within weeks of my firing, the company that had dismissed me for being inefficient had lost the vast majority of its business and was effectively non-operational. 6 months after being fired, I stood in the yard of Reliable Routes Logistics. It was a chilly morning, the air crisp and clean. Our fleet, now 15 trucks strong and growing, was lined up, engines rumbling softly as drivers did their pre-trip checks. Our modest terminal had expanded, leasing additional bays for maintenance and warehousing. The office inside buzzed with activity. Patty expertly coordinating routes, Caleb and Gabriel overseeing cargo handling, Naomi managing the complex scheduling and administration with quiet competence, and David working on securing new contracts and optimizing our growing operations. Most of the faces I saw belonged to people who had once worked at Midwest Logistics Group. They were here because they were good at what they did, and because they were valued. We couldn't hire everyone, but we hired the best. People who understood that logistics was about precision, dedication, and trust. Midwest Logistics Group in Tulsa no longer existed. After the rapid client exodus and mounting liabilities, the regional operation had declared bankruptcy and been liquidated. We'd even managed to acquire a few of their former trucks at auction. Good machines that just needed proper maintenance and care, exactly what Ethan had denied them. Ethan was gone. Last I heard, he'd failed upwards into another consulting role somewhere, still preaching his gospel of efficiency, presumably until his next inevitable failure. The corporate firm that had bought Midwest Logistics Group from Eleanor had written off their investment as a catastrophic loss, a billion-dollar lesson in the value of human capital and established relationships. Eleanor joined me in the yard, leaning on her cane. At 75, she wasn't involved in the day-to-day grind, but she was a constant presence, a source of wisdom and inspiration. She watched our trucks pull out, one by one, heading towards clients who trusted us implicitly. "Never thought I'd see trucks rolling with my values on the door again, Scarlett," she mused, a smile on her face. "Your values built the foundation, Eleanor," I replied. "We just built the company on top of it." We walked inside. The atmosphere was energetic, focused, but also filled with a sense of camaraderie. People genuinely seemed happy to be there, to be doing meaningful work for clients who appreciated them. This wasn't just a business. It was a community. "You know what the difference was?" Eleanor said, accepting a cup of coffee from Patty. "They thought this business was about moving boxes and optimizing routes on a screen. They thought people were interchangeable parts. You proved it's about moving trust. It's about being the person someone calls when their business is on the line. It's about getting it done no matter what." She was right. Ethan's pure efficiency had been a cold, empty concept. Our success was built on something warm, human, and strong. We hadn't just taken clients. We had inherited relationships. We hadn't just hired employees. We had built a team, a family of seasoned professionals who knew the value of a handshake, a late-night call, and a promise kept. Later that day, I took a rare afternoon off with David. We drove out to the lake, sat by the water, and just breathed. The frantic pace of the last few months finally seemed to slow. "Happy?" David asked simply, echoing a question I'd once been asked myself. I looked out at the water, reflecting on the journey from that cold, glass-walled office to this moment of quiet peace. The fear, the anger, the crushing uncertainty, it had all been real. But so was the resilience, the loyalty, the opportunity that bloomed from the ashes. "Yeah," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "I am." Turns out being fired wasn't losing my job. It was being given the chance to build the right one. The long haul isn't just about the miles you cover. It's about the kind of foundation you build and who you choose to build it with.